I heard both sounds. I heard bloop, 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 and I heard blong.
Live from the Talking Joe studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey now, what's that sound? Everybody, look, what's going down? It's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast. And if you're new to the show, you can find out all about it over at the website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. Today we are continuing our look at the Disavowed era of G.I. Joe with issue 28, Players and Pawns. Part 1 of 5 of that multi-parter, which was from Devil's Due in 2004. I tried to come up with some chess puns for the Players and Pawns arc, but it didn't quite work out, so I just left that in my drafts folder. Now, without further ado, let me introduce my co-hosts. First up, it's a real American player. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Jay, and hello, listeners.
And next up, it's porn star G.I. Jay Cordray.
Howdy, Joe fans. I'm not sure how to react to that one.
Yeehaw.
Just howdy, Joe fans, and rounding out the crew.
Now, rounding out the crew, what I find more amazing than the guests that we get onto the show is that some of them choose to come back. So, making his encore appearance, it's none other than the writer of the book that we are going to be talking about. It's Brandon Jerwa.
Hi, kids. How you doing?
Applause.
I feel it. I really feel it. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is very special.
It's great to have you back, Brandon.
It's great to be back. Your
So
name?
We sure hope you read the comic this time.
I did. No, I really did. And in fact, I had before it was sent to me. So I was prepared. Okay. But before anything,
You knew there was a butt coming.
There is a butt coming. I heard your little review of G.I. Joe Frontline, was it 17? 17!
Is that the Night Creeper issue?
Yes. And I just wanted to point out one thing. You're absolutely right. It's not good. And I helped put that on a store shelf, but it's not good. It's not good.
Hey, was that the issue written by the two people who'd worked on Friends?
Yeah, and I heard, by the way, that you mentioned that you can't find any proof that they worked on Friends. I am certain that is what I was told. I'm not making any of this up. I know I sound like a maniac. I am certain that I was told that they worked on Friends, and I couldn't find any proof of that either. And I was like digging for emails because I was listening to that episode because I love it when people talk about me. So I was listening and following along. And yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah, I had to write the dialogue over the existing art.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't change anything. Like there was something about the page layout, pagination. There was something about the page layout that I couldn't change the order of things.
Mm.
And I may be misremembering. You may just look at those pages and go, nope, that's nonsense. He could have moved that around. But in my head, I think I was told not to move it around. But in any event, yeah, it doesn't make sense. And like, people appearing out of nowhere in rooms that they should have been noticed in when they're trying to surprise people and stuff like that. So I'm as guilty as anybody with that one. But yeah, it ain't great.
I was going to say, it was something that we were sort of pondered in that episode about what point you came in and how much you could change. Because even if it was still at script stage, how do you save something that you fundamentally think isn't quite working without scrapping it and rewriting yourself? In which case, why have the original script and the original writers? You can't be expected to just do someone else's job for them, right? So
I guess
if it was art on the artboard, and then you can only do what you can do with the dialogue, there's less at your disposal to turn the boat around.
Yeah, and also I for some reason I have this recollection You remember how there's a toad involved with the poison?
Oh yeah. Yes.
I would
Toad and frog.
I would swear that that toad or frog is in there for a completely different reason. And I think I came up with the poison angle, and like maybe these writers will come out of the woodwork and be like, no, this guy's a liar, and they could be right. I don't mean to be, but I'm pretty sure that there was something about that toad or frog that I actually changed because I remember gathering research for it.
So it was Brandon that watched the Discovery Channel documentary, all right?
I got a lot of spare time, buddy. Okay.
While we're talking about things that maybe we didn't find in our favor, there was a scene
more
in the last issue that we did, maybe not the last one, the one before that, the Scott Sturgis one. And see if you remember this, Brandon. Duke brings this guy in who's a reporter, and he tells him everything, all kinds of stuff about the Joes, including the fact that Snake Eyes left Scarlet at the altar. And I couldn't believe it when I read that. I was like, what is going on here? And I could not believe it. I think we'll probably get to issue 43 of this series. And then when we look back, worst line of dialogue is going to go to you for that line right there. What do you have to say for yourself?
I have no recollection of that issue. I don't.
It was the guys
Isn't
from
that
Friends.
the same episode where Duke threatened to hit a civilian with a clipboard? So I'm just saying, it's a balance, my friend. It's a delicate dance. I don't know. I was reading that too, and I was like, that is an awful lot of exposition. And I think in my head, I thought that I was like, he's just going to overwhelm him with all this ridiculous information, and maybe that didn't come across.
That's okay. We tease because, like Mark said, we tease because we're friends. And we were like, yeah, I hit that one, I hit that line, and I was like, what is going on here? Why is Duke telling him all this stuff?
Fair, yeah. Totally fair. And I will also admit that as I look back at these Joe issues, it is 100% on the writer. I sure loved putting emphasis on words. I don't know why. So many words are bolded.
I
okay asked for it.
That's a convention. I think we see less of that in comics in the last 20 years, but you see that a lot in comics in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Yeah. So in and of itself, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, good. I found it jarring.
when we occasionally read dialogue aloud for this podcast, it's fun to have a few bolded and italicized words so we know where to put the emphasis.
Especially if Tim reads it.
That's right.
like this panel in the issue we're about to talk about, where Hawk and Duke come into the room, and Hawk says, "I hope you all enjoyed your time off." Sorry, I said that wrong. It goes like this: I hope you all enjoyed your time off. I think that's better.
Well, this has been great. Thanks so much, guys. Good talk.
So some more reasonable, level-headed questions from me. So talking about those issues and my notes of some of the things we talked about. The title of your first solo issue, Scott Sturgis is a reasonable man. Is that a quote? Is that kind of a quote, a reference to something in particular, that someone is a reasonable man?
Nope.
Okay.
And it's funny. I titled it that way. I guess in my head I was going for like a sort of 60s Twilight Zone type of episode title, right? Mm-hmm. But no, it doesn't mean anything. But the fact that you asked means that I accomplished my mission and created curiosity in the reader.
What was that one X-Files episode that had the real weird...
Jose Chung's from outer space.
See, yes, you knew exactly what I was talking about.
That's amazing.
That's it.
And Scott Sturgis, when I looked him up, there was a musician and a journalist, and I thought it's going to be the Seattle Musician.
That's true. Scott and I were real good friends at the time. Weirdly, I asked him if I could make him a character for the story, and he said, yeah, sure. That was very cool. I picked the name Scanner. What I didn't know, and this is a true story, when he was a kid, he and his brother played G.I. Joe, and his code name was Scanner.
What? what?
Totally random. Yeah, right. You get it. But that is a true story, and that one's always warmed my heart a little bit because it was totally unintentional and unknown, and the magic of G.I. Joe brought the world together that day.
That's amazing. I think, is it Alan Moore? He talks about this concept of like an idea space where there's in the universe, these ideas exist that people can somehow tap into. And
Absolutely.
Amazing. So there were, on the Fallen Joe's memorial wall, there were a few names we didn't recognize. You might remember who they were. Entirely blameless if you don't. They were Mark Fruwith.
Nope.
Walter Rose.
And Samuel Wells.
Samuel Wells worked for Devil's Due. I did not put. I think I chose any G.I. Joe name you see. I chose the others. I did not choose. I don't know where they came from except for Sam, who is a fine fella. And I'm sorry that he fell in fictional battle. But yeah, no, he's a Devil's Due. The other two people, I don't know who they are.
Okay, and so
in fact, and there's a letter in the issue we're about to talk about. There's a letter about that memorial wall.
Oh, okay.
Better to have fallen in fictional battle than never have been in fiction at all.
Tim, do you want to talk about the letter while we're on it?
Sure. Yeah. So this is issue 28, and there's some other things that I want to talk about the letters page, but the second letter is from a Marty Petit from Ponca City, Oklahoma, and congrats. It was cool to have a monument of the real file names of the Joes that had been lost in battle on page 2. I had to dig out some reference material and look up some of the names that I didn't recognize. ... I did notice that Flash was not on the memorial. He died in issue 25. I really enjoy the comics, but looks like Flash got missed. And the reply in part reads, as for Flash's name not being listed on the memorial, I believe when asked about it and some other names that appeared to be missing, Brandon replied that we didn't actually see the entire memorial, and then there could have been a particular order to what names went where, and that the missing names were on a different part of the memorial. Of course, I could be completely misremembering that entire dialogue.
Sounds good.
So to answer a question that the four of us were not posing when I interrupted on this, the reason why we don't see all the names is because maybe we don't see all the names.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the editor had forgotten the conversation, within hours of having it, whereas Brandon is expected to remember it 20 years later.
That's right. Yeah. A guy wrote down in writing that he can't remember a conversation he had a month ago. But yeah, here, let me pull it up from the memory bank.
And so the other sort of thing to dig out that we didn't touch on is some of the Easter eggs in the Brandon Jerwa jingle.
Yeah.
So we didn't touch on
absolutely everything there. So we talked about we talked about your role at Funko Pop. The lyric was Funko Pop Manatee, but let's skip past that.
Ironically, I don't work for Funko anymore, but go on.
So what did you get up to at Funko Pop? What sort of pies did you dip your fingers into?
Oh, I was the director of narrative for a minute, and I would name toys and write little blurbs for things. There's a really neat, no hard feelings towards your former employer. There's a really neat line of stuff coming from Funko called Villainous Valentines that you can get right now. And they're little vinyl figures of cutesy animals holding axes and chainsaws. And they were created by a brilliant artist there named Elise Walters. But I did the text for the Villainous Valentines, I want to axe you on a date, that kind of thing. And they're really a lot of fun, and I'm very, very proud of them. So yeah, I worked on some toy lines. I proofread things, and I wrote a whole bunch of different stuff. But yeah. Very excited to work at a toy company.
Next up, we have Stripping Gorilla. So I'll throw this over to you. But when I first heard about this, I imagined that you're in a stripping in a gorilla costume, taking off the gorilla costume, but you remain in the gorilla costume, and it's the gorilla taking off clothes. Is that right?
You get it. You've seen your fair share of stripping gorillas, sir. I can tell. Yeah. So I had a job. This is like, I don't know. I was like 18 maybe, and I was in Kansas because where you want to wear layers of clothing is Kansas in the summer. And I got this job. I answered a newspaper ad. Ask your grandparents what a newspaper is. And I answered a newspaper ad, and I was a stripping gorilla. Just as you say, I wore a gorilla costume, and then I would wear clothing over the gorilla costume, like Bermuda shorts and a shirt. This was my job. How dare you? And I drove a moped. This story only gets better and better. I drove a moped, and I had a boombox, and I would go to events, parties, and I would be a stripping gorilla, and I would do, let's see, It Takes Two by Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock, where there was that. There was It's Tricky. There was Monkey by George Michael. God, why am I talking about this in public? I don't have to. And yeah, so I spent a summer making, decent money as a gorilla stripping gorilla.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you drove on the moped as the gorilla.
Sans gorilla head.
Okay.
But
okay.
yes, a few times I did bring my gear with me, but a few times I did actually just go hauling down the road on a moped in a gorilla costume with a big white helmet, like a Spaceballs type helmet.
Very good.
Spaceballs, the helmet.
It isn't that I can't make this up, but why would I? This is a very real part of my life.
So the last one was SprocketMan the hero. So who's SprocketMan?
Okay, so I was a big drama nerd in high school, and I was in all the plays. And why is that funny? So I was a big drama nerd in high school. We had a very serious theater department, and the Bicycle Safety Association of Washington came when I was in the 10th grade, I think, 11th, the first time. They came, and they were looking for an actor to be SprocketMan, the bicycle safety superhero. You can Google this, by the way. There are SprocketMen, Sprocket people, I'm sure now, all over the United States. I don't know if they still do it, but it's like a little franchise that you can get into and use this bicycle safety superhero. So I can send you a photo of this if you'd like to include it in the final broadcast.
Oh yeah.
I imagine me. I was in much better shape. It was high school. I was in stripping gorilla shape. I wore bright red tennis shoes, yellow tights, little red bicycle shorts. The bicycle tops. I don't know what you call them, but they're sort of half tone across the middle, and they've got a little zipper at the top and long sleeves. Yeah, well, sure. So I had one of those that was yellow on the bottom and then red on the sort of tunic top with a big gold sprocket on it. And then I had a mask, and the mask had a sprocket on the forehead. And then there was a bicycle helmet that was also red and had a sprocket on it. And I would go around to elementary schools, and I would teach them about bicycle safety as SprocketMan.
Very good.
Well, that's cool.
Public service.
I try to give back when I can.
Excellent. So yeah, that was the sort of the mysteries that had to be resolved. So let's push ahead on into where we are in 2004, and what we noticed, and something that I hadn't really appreciated before looking back on this era, was that you started with your first issue 26, and pretty much the same month, or maybe the month after, Devil's Due launches the Reloaded book as well. So, what was your thoughts about that? I guess initially at the time, what did the dynamic feel like?
Gather around, everybody! It's story time. So, I have, made my way up into the upper echelons of Devil's Due freelancing, and I am about to take over my dream gig. My dream job of writing G.I. Joe. Oh my God, I'm writing the main title. Devil's Due announces that they're going to do G.I. Joe Reloaded. So, understandably, I am, a little worried that I'm going to, my G.I. Joe is going to get lost in the shuffle. And I went to Josh Blaylock, and I said, hey, I was just curious, you're doing all this Reloaded stuff. Like, what's the plan? What's the plan for G.I. Joe? And he said, oh, we're just going to continue to put it out and it has a good audience and the audience will support it. And I said, okay, well, you're doing all this Reloaded press, like you're really doing a big push. Are we going to do a big push? And he's like, no, it has its audience. And I mean, that was it. Right. Like that was the end of the discussion. And I wasn't there every day internally, but I feel kind of like that's what they did, at least for a little bit.
And without trying to be mean, but I guess at some point, looking at the book, you must have been a little bit relieved that it wasn't actually very good.
I didn't read it.
Wow.
I didn't read it. Yeah. I wanted to. I didn't want to be influenced by it. I didn't want to feel like I needed to keep up with it. And I didn't want to feel like I was competing with it. So I did eventually read it. And, well, I did eventually read it. And, I probably would have felt a little better at the time about it had I read it, simply because they were two very different things. And I don't think that there was any risk of losing the main G.I. Joe audience to it, is what I'll say.
Mm-hmm. It didn't last very long, did it?
Yeah, it lasted 14 issues.
Which is a year.
And what we can say is that your run on the regular G.I. Joe lasted 20 or 25 issues.
Yeah.
So you won.
Not that it's a contest, but I did. Yeah.
And there's a lot going on here. I think without, sales figures and looking at advertising and, talking to the creators who worked on the other book and getting their perspective, it's all reasonable conjecture. But I think what happens in a case like this is that a brand like G.I. Joe in 2003 can sustain one monthly book. And the question is, can it sustain two? And, how were sales on Frontline at the end of Frontline? Or are we now in the era where every 2 years, sort of no matter what your comic is, even if it's an X-Men or Spider-Man comic, do you want to relaunch it every 2 years? At this point, this is where Amazing Spider-Man or Fantastic Four every couple of years, it's well, we just had a big event or the writer changes, so let's do a new issue number 1. And then a year or 2 or 3 later, if you count the original numbering, it's going to be at some big anniversary, like issue 450 or issue 500. So let's switch it back. So even if a monthly Amazing Spider-Man isn't starting over as a different book, it is doing a kind of relaunch. And so you take the G.I. Joe fandom that showed up for Blaylock's issue number 1. And 2 years later, you have fewer of those, maybe this is a guess, half as many, a quarter as many. And then you split it a little further because now some of those people have the money to also buy Frontline. And then Frontline ends and Reloaded starts. And you get in some new people who see all that press and, Wizard Magazine or whoever pays attention to it. And some of the people who are reading Reloaded aren't reading the original. But at a certain point, in 2003, 2004, is G.I. Joe popular enough to sustain more than one book? I'm asking that philosophically. I'm not looking for an answer.
And and I think to get the answer, you kind of have to delve into how successful Reloaded was in terms of fulfilling what it was trying to achieve. And yeah, let's not do that here.
Just to put a final button on this. Just so everyone knows, the comic book we're talking about, Devil's Due issue 28, the final ad. That's the final, not the inside back cover, but the final page of the comic is an ad for G.I. Joe Reloaded #2. So it was very much in front of fans who were reading Jerwa's book.
True.
Well noted. And the other thing about the timeline on this is that Master and Apprentice came out not too long into your run, so it must looking at the timing of it must have been around about as soon as your first issue landed, that you must have been given the green light for a spin-off series to be working on 2 series at the
But
same time.
can we hold that story until we talk about Master and
let's
Apprentice?
do that then.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, Brandon, whatever you do right now, don't talk about Master and Apprentice.
So, Master and Apprentice. Oh, yeah. No, got it.
Let's talk about 28.
We're gonna talk about comics from Devil's Due. It's something you wondered if Talking Joe would ever do. I guess we'll explain it all to you. Gonna take some time to read the books we've never read. Oh.
So it's issue 28, Players and Pawns, 1 of 5, from Devil's Due in 2004. The story is Brandon Jerwa.
Brandon Jerwa.
Pencils, Tim Seeley. Inks, Cory Hamscher. Colours, Brett R. Smith. Letters, Dreamer Design. Graphic design, Mike Norton. Military consultation, Andrew Swenson. And the cover is Tim Seeley, Andrew Pepoy, and Val Staples. So let's have a look at the cover.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Tim, why don't you start off with your thoughts?
Sure. I know I talked a lot about the last 2 covers, so I'll keep this one much shorter. As a general rule, I think a monthly comic, its cover should be pretty different than the previous issue and the next issue. And an easy way to do that is to have a different dominant color, like a different background color. And something that I like about 26, 27, 28, if you put them next to each other on a shelf or your computer monitor, is that happens. So 26, there's a yellow background with a lot of red light. 27, there's a white background, and 28, there's a blue background. I think Tim Seeley does well here with fewer elements. There's just one character that can be big and bold. It's this character who's flying at us, and I will admit to being ignorant of a lot of the middle 2000-aught G.I. Joe action figures. And when I read this for this podcast, I thought, I guess that's Firefly in some kind of like new Devil's Due style outfit or some like 2003 action figure getup that I don't remember. And then I read the issue, and then I was Googling, and it turns out to be not Firefly. It's a Joe in disguise. I think the cover is it's good. It doesn't blow me away, but it's a nice, simple, exciting, bold image of a Joe flying at us with some armor and a wing jetpack thing. He's firing 2 missiles. There's a small Gatling gun. His fists are forward, and he's swooped from a great distance from. Is there a name for this kind of island where it's got a curve? It's like missing a big gap. Thank you. He's flying up from an atoll. So I'm going to say the Pacific.
That's Cobra Island.
Okay. I wondered. Okay, Okay, good. Thank you.
And quite bold single character, and featuring one of the new characters in the issue, but also one of the new figures that had not long been in the toy shops, so barrel rolls specifically. So and people were excited about the new toys. That they might not have been quite loved by history, but people were excited about seeing a new set of toys and a new set of characters in the shops. So I'm sure a lot of people were excited to go, hey, it's that new Joe, and he's on the front cover. Brandon, what degree of say did you have into the covers? Was it just the script and they'd go away and do whatever they wanted on the cover, or did you sort of tend to chime in with a suggestion?
I want to say that they didn't ask me much about the covers. I think that Tim Seeley would usually show me a sketch or say, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking, and I would be like, yeah, okay, great, sounds good. So no, I don't think I had too much input into that.
Okay. Let's get a plot breakdown to remember exactly what this issue was all about. Jay.
At Cobra Field HQ in New York City, acting commander of Cobra's forces Destro receives an urgent call from a Claws unit on Cobra Island. The Claws commander tells Destro that Dr. Mindbender has escaped. Destro tells him the next time he hears his voice, if he hasn't recovered Dr. Mindbender, his second in command will get a promotion, Darth Vader style. Just then Cobra Commander returns, with Ninja Bodyguard Storm Shadow followed closely behind. Cobra Commander asks for a situation report. Destro turns to him and says, when you radioed me from Cobra Island looking for help, you made a promise. Assist me and all debts are clear. Destro tells the commander that debt has been paid and he is leaving. At Joe HQ in Arizona, Hawk and Duke introduce 6 new Joes to the team. Hacker, Depth Charge, Mayday, Barrel Roll, Mariner, and Dinah. Formerly of the October Guard, now going by the code name Verona. Duke then says all the other green shirts will be sent packing, and the crowd goes wild. Duke and Hawk then meet with Snake Eyes and Scarlet, who are just returning from a somewhat successful mission in the Tibetan Mountains. Hawk and Scarlet have a tense confrontation. Hawk tells them, don't bother unpacking. Meanwhile, in New York, the Baroness confronts Destro about his decision to leave Cobra. Destro says, surely she can't be surprised. The Baroness says she's only surprised he didn't consult her first. Destro says if there's any question where her loyalties lie, they wouldn't be having this conversation. 0300 hours the next morning, Flint, Torpedo, and the New Joes are spotted during an attempt to infiltrate Cobra Island. A fierce sea battle ensues. During the battle, Barrel Roll leaps into the ocean to deal with a downed Cobra glider pilot. As the Joes board their extraction chopper, Mayday asks Torpedo about Barrel Roll. Torpedo reveals that Barrel Roll has taken the Cobra glider's pilot's place. Later that day at WNN Studios in New York City, General Hawk is a guest on 20 Questions with Hector Ramirez. Ramirez asks Hawk about a conflict that is brewing in Sierra Gorda and if Hawk will be sending any of his men into the war-torn country. Hawk tells Ramirez he has no plans to send any Joes into Sierra Gorda. After the interview, Cobra Commander's face suddenly appears on every monitor in the studio. Cobra Commander tells Hawk he's going to take a forward approach to dealing with potential threats from now on. Dr. Mindbender is captured. Serpentor is dead. Now it's your turn, he says as the television studio is engulfed in a massive explosion.
Coom.
I'm a great lover of the Crack-a-Coom. I know, I really
Must be a Thor fan.
That's right. You're exactly.
Oh, nice. It's good to have a go-to sound effect. Sometimes you could discern the writer of a particular comic just from the sound effects that they're choosing to use.
100%.
Excellent. So where to start? I guess a big bit of this issue is that we've got new Joes being introduced.
New toys!
Hacker, Depth Charge, Mayday, Barrel Roll, Mariner, plus Verona. So Verona meaning crow in Russian, I believe.
Yes.
And we did see, although some of these figures are based on toys of the time, Verona was brand new, but later became a G.I. Joe Collectors Club exclusive, 2018, I believe.
Similarly for Mayday and for Mariner, correct? They did not have toys at the time, and since then there have just been some customs, but
correct.
Not any official ones. But Hacker, Depth Charge, and Barrel Roll were figures around 2003.
Yeah, and honestly, I mentioned this before. I'm sure we talked about this with Frontline, but I liked the toys. I liked the characters. And I'll just tell you straight up, like, so much of this issue is me doing a tribute to the things that I love about G.I. Joe comics, which is new toys, new characters, the Devilfish, one of my favorite vehicles of all time. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the cover of issue 47, where they introduced the Devilfish, is just, it's the greatest toy poster I've ever seen in my life. And it really made me want that Devilfish very badly, specifically with Wetsuit Beachhead and the new Hawk figure, right? Like, that was a great item showcase. And I tried to do the same thing here. And it just so happens we've got that great action shot of Barrel Roll in his Spy Troops gear on the front. But this really was me playing with my toys, and as we get into the big water fight, me definitely trying to imitate Uncle Larry a couple of times. But we can get to that as it comes. But yeah, I just, I wanted to play with my toys. Hasbro never made me do it. Barrel Roll is Dwight Stahl, who is a major figure at Hasbro. He's the guy who made me into an action figure. And I don't think that had happened yet. When this issue came out. But I love Dwight. Dwight is one of the coolest guys you will ever meet. And I was more than happy to put his character in, and he wrote me and he's like, you don't have to do this. And I was like, no, I really want to. I'm a big fan of the character. And so I built out that Stahl family storyline with his brother Blackout, also an action figure, because I thought it was cool. I thought it was all very G.I. Joe. Let's get the toys out and play.
Yeah. I mean, it was I think a cool part, and I think it really worked with the original line as well. I think it gave a lot of momentum to a story. Possibly one of the things that around the IDW run where Larry Hammer's been working on it is that he doesn't have that pressure to keep on introducing new characters. And I think as a storyteller, just going, look, here's a new character, here's a new vehicle, do something with them. All of these ideas will start pinging and sort of push you in a certain direction. Whereas if it's do whatever you want, it's some possibly just too broad, Yeah. Barrel Roll, named after Dwight Stahl, the lead designer for 3 3/4 line at the time. You mentioned Thomas Stahl, his brother, being the Blackout Cobra Sniper character that we'll see further down the run. And also Bomb Strike, Alyssa Renee Stahl, named after his daughter, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so. Bomb Strike, I don't think existed until after I was almost done writing Joe, so I never got a chance to include her. But yeah, so those characters, and then Paige Adams was a Blaylock character who I liked, but they just kept calling her Paige Adams, and I was like, she needs a code name. Mariner.
Oh, we're gonna talk about Paige Adams.
Mariner, I just kind of made up. I think I feel like that's what happened. And then Verona, I was a huge fan of Dinah joining the team.
Whose idea was that, Brandon?
That might have been. No, that was mine.
Mariner's name was an existing green shirt, David Adcox, who did appear as a fairly generic green shirt in issue 2, but literally a name in a speech bubble. So I don't think existed beyond that.
I think I was just closing loops, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Doing your research and sort of I can put that in. And Verona, obviously we'd seen her sort of join the Joes, but hadn't done an awful amount other than sit on the sofa watching TV, bad cooking shows and so on. That's call back to issue 18 of Frontline, where she was watching the Roblox cooking show. But
right.
So, where did I guess the name Verona? That was your idea?
Yeah, that was my idea. And I just, I thought it was an appropriate enough name for her. Tim gave her the little, symbology there. He came up with that. But
wait, help us out. How is it appropriate? What is a Verona?
A crow.
Okay.
And she's a sniper, so I figure, high position.
Yeah,
always watching.
Crow's nest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with all of these new Joes, we Jay already hinted at it. We get this very sort of subtle kind of, again, closing the loop. The green shirts are being retired. So I think
sweep them out of there.
I think a nice little subtle Let's find the page that it has.
This is, it's, we're also changing our security policies. From now on, our green shirt trainees will learn their trade in various military bases nationwide. And they won't even know this facility exists until they're initiated as full team members. The ones who already know are being upgraded to cadet class.
and let's never talk of them again.
That's Hawk. That's Hawk, and behind him, two of the former green shirts are high-fiving.
That's right.
Or
They made it out.
I should say Hacker. I should say Hacker is, where'd that page go? Hacker is high-fiving.
Depth charge.
Depth charge. Yeah. No, Mariner. He's high-fiving Mariner.
Yeah.
So a new figure who was not a green shirt is high-fiving a new character never made into a toy who was a green shirt. So it's not technically two green shirts high-fiving, but basically.
And we are worth calling out that of these characters that are these new toys, that this was the Spy Troops era of G.I. Joe, where you would typically get it'd be a 2-pack of figures, and they'd have these extra bits of gear that would mean that they can pretend to be a character on the other side. So there was some clever little things like Shipwreck came with a Cobra Commander outfit. The Dreadnought, is he called Burnout? He came with some kind of SWAT gear. They played into it more on some figures than on others. But yeah, Barrel Roll was a key one. So he came with this air assault vehicle and like the Cobra helmet and the Cobra logo on that sort of glider vehicle thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of that, I just wanted to say, Barrel Roll, out of all the Spy Troop stuff, he had that cool gear for a Cobra character disguise that's based around a character that we've never seen. I ended up calling them Raptor Vipers in this, right? But because I just love that that's ridiculous, Raptor Viper. Also, I loved that. The glider and that helmet and everything. I'm like, well, okay, let's just make this a thing, and let's, again, playing with the toys, but I really wanted a proper Raptor Viper figure. I had multiple Barrel Roll figures so I could have a little army of Raptor Vipers.
This is an important point. I want to clarify this for our listeners. So Barrel Roll has this jetpack thing with wings and a helmet and some armor and gauntlets, and what Brandon is saying is there is no action figure that was released that is a Cobra, which is what Barrel Roll is pretending to be. And so in this issue, we do see actual, quote, Raptor Vipers, which is a couple of Cobras, in this flying armor, so that in the story you could say, oh, when Barrel Roll pretends to be a Cobra and he puts on some of their gear, he has taken their gear, as opposed to he has a giant backpack, and in it he's like, I just can't wait till I can put on my giant jetpack and this helmet that has half a Cobra logo on it, and I can run up behind those other Cobra, those Raptor Vipers, and my color's a little bit different because I'm still a Joe, right? And I can say hey guys, are we going back to base? So this is another kind of this isn't like closing a loop, tying something off from the Blaylock run. This is closing a loop, sort of like a small hole in the toy line, filling a small logic gap.
Yeah, and we're being given not just in the comic book, we're not just being given one new Joe, we're also being given a new legion of Cobra troops as well at the same time. So double your money.
Buy all our play sets and toys.
So I have some overall thoughts about story in this issue, and I have some overall thoughts about art and color. And my sort of narrative points are, I was surprised when Cobra Commander and Storm Shadow on page 2 get back so quickly, and Cobra Commander reclaims Cobra for his own. And I thought, that he was gone after the big battle in 25, and that the rest of Cobra for the last 2 issues didn't know where he was. And that Destro taking over in the previous issue was such an interesting move. And I don't mean awkward bad, I mean awkward good. I thought there was a lot of drama left to squeeze out of keeping Cobra Commander away, either for the characters, but we know that he's out there, or for the characters and us, and he doesn't appear in the book. So I was surprised that he came back so fast. And then in terms of this would be sort of art and narrative, 3 pages later, when these 6 new Joes, some of which are new toys, get introduced, there's a blue background, and Duke is, I guess, Hawk. Hawk is narrating each of them, their code name, their real name, their specialty. And it's not a 6-panel page, but it sort of acts like a 6-panel page, right? It's 6 vignettes. It's just these characters floating over this blue background. And on the one hand, I like this page treatment because it's this little like G.I. Joe order of battle, or like battle lines, battle files, page for each of these characters. And also the rest of the issue, the color is really aggressive and it takes place at night. So we don't get like really good views of their costumes. So it's nice to get a really basic view of each of their costumes. And also, it was those 2. But I couldn't help but think that in sort of every other G.I. Joe comic, when a new character is introduced, it's more often in story. It's like they're already flying to their mission, or like Cobra's attacking and there's just like a new guy in the cafeteria or in the like sleeping quarters, and like 3 established Joes are like, let's go, and they rattle off 2 other names and a new guy. And so I feel like from a sort of like toy and order of battle and comic book character presentation, this is cool. From a narrative presentation, it like stopped me halfway through this comic. And I'm like, no, I want them to be integrated more. The thing with Destro leaving in a shock move without consulting Baroness, I wrote this down because I hadn't gotten to the page yet where he's about to get on a helicopter?
Yeah.
And she shows up and she says, why are you leaving without talking to me? And he says, that's a test. So like, are you coming with me? The fact that you're not coming with me, or so clearly coming with me, shows that, you know, we're not doing well, or you should stay, or I don't want to be with you, whatever it is. And when he just leaves, he just says to Cobra Commander, well, you're back, I'm leaving. I wrote down, like, I wrote page 3. Wait, Destro is leaving without the Baroness? Without consulting the Baroness? So I'm glad that the writer of this issue included something about their relationship and makes it a test, because I can kind of see them doing that. But for me, it didn't ring true to Destro's character, even if he knows something that I don't, and it's revealed a bunch of pages later. I thought, no, there should have been a conversation beforehand.
And I think, you know, we'll give a pass as well to this to some degree, because I've been sneakily reading ahead a little bit. I've been getting carried away. So there's this is touched upon again, and there is a bit more of a storytelling logic to what's going on than is potentially revealed just in the pages of this issue. So I'd say to be continued, maybe on that specific quibble.
Yes.
My last sort of narrative bullet point is that I like the idea of introducing a bunch of new characters, because Marvel issues certainly would do that, whether it's a couple or many all at once. But I since Devil's Due didn't have to introduce new characters, I found that introducing, you know, we've seen Dana before, and we've sort of seen Paige Adams before. So it's not 6 new characters, but it's 4.5 new characters. And they are on this mission with Torpedo. So I like that it's an established Joe and a bunch of new people. But I would like fewer new people all at once.
Fair enough.
Especially on a mission, you want to kind of sprinkle some old guys in there. More than just Torpedo and... who was the other one? Was there another one? Flint, kind of.
Yeah, Flint, kind of.
Yeah. First off, I want to go back to Destro and the Baroness, if I may. I deliberately, very deliberately, actually. I know a lot of times I tell you guys, oh, yeah, no, I don't know what I was doing there. In this case, I know exactly what you're talking about how Cobra Commander goes away and everybody else gets to work, trying to screw him over as much as possible while they can and get their own power base sorted until he comes back, because he's always going to come back. In this case, I wanted to do exactly the opposite and have him return so suddenly. And instead of doing the other thing that happens in G.I. Joe comics, where Cobra Commander comes back and they all start arguing, or they all start, bickering over what's going to happen, or he has to lay down the big smack and punish everybody right out of the gate. I wanted to take a thing where Destro's just like, nope, I'm out. And, yes, it is sudden. Yes, he did not consult the Baroness. Even Cobra Commander and Tomax and Zaymot think this is odd, right? So I wanted them to speak for the audience and be just like, wow, this is definitely not the norm, right? So with the introducing of the new Joes, you're 100% right. Yeah, usually they get introduced right in the middle of a big battle and everything. I wanted to spend the battle time focusing on action and not so much exposition, because I wanted, there's the sort of twist to that whole mission. But moreover, the intent of introducing them all at once, as I read this, I remember, was really about using that moment to close those loops. We had just buried a bunch of Joes, right? And, this whole thing about getting rid of the green shirts and all of that was deliberate so that all of that business could be cleared up in one fell swoop that was a logical grouping of things, right? So that's why I'm a big fan of bringing in new Joes mid-mission. The pipeline ploy, where they bring in the new bullet stoppers, replacements, and they just dump a bunch of new Joes on us, and others have to leave because they're wounded and tired, right? I love that gag, but in this case, yeah, I wanted to kind of have a definitive reshuffling of the deck in that way.
Cool. Jay, did you have any particular thoughts on this issue overall?
When I was reading it, just what you guys have already talked about really is, as I was reading it, I'm like, oh, there's another toy. There's another toy. There's another toy. There's just a lot of stuff to go through. And I was like, oh, there's the sea sled. There's the, so it's really cool to see a lot of that stuff. I'm going to complain about the color again real briefly. Terrible. Now I'm reading this, like I said, I've got two different copies. I've got a digital copy and I've got a trade paperback. And God bless whoever scanned this one, because the digital copy looks much better than my trade paperback. The trade paperback, again, is just so dark you can barely tell what the hell's going on. So yeah, I'd really love to see some black and white versions of these pages. But I like the story a lot better overall. We're starting to get into more of, obviously this is part one of what we say, Players and Pawns. So it's, things are ramping up, where the other ones have just kind of been setting things up. Destro, Baroness, I liked it when, Cobra Commander came back and Destro was just immediately was like, all right, I'm out. Because after the issue 17, I think that we talked about at Frontline, that's kind of what I said. I was like, okay, Cobra Commander just hired someone to kill Destro. The guy he buys his weapons from. I'm like, there's no conceivable reason in the world why Destro would continue this relationship anymore. You don't care how much money Cobra Commander's paying for all this crap. He would be like, you tried to kill me.
It's all right. It was a test. It's fine.
Yeah, I'd be like, and now he's doing the same thing to Baroness, I guess. And a lot of testy people around. But, yeah, so to me, I was like, and you can kind of tell, I thought it was funny on that, I think it's it's the first page, Cobra Commander's voice. And I don't know whether... Look at the 6th panel. Destro just looks pissed off in that panel. And I don't know whether he's mad because of the Claw Commander that he just got done, ripping a new one, or whether he hears Cobra Commander's voice and he's like, here we go. This is it. You know how it is when you know something, you've been waiting for something. So Cobra Commander walks in and he's like, all right, Dick, I'm out of here. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's been a long time coming. So that wasn't a surprise at all. And then, yeah, we get into the stuff with the new Joes. And I just brushed over this in the plot breakdown, the confrontation between Hawk and Scarlet. Not real sure how we all feel about this. Snake Eyes going out on his own, and Hawk all of a sudden being like, I don't know, crazy, furious about it. And every time we see him, he looks like his eyes are gonna pop out of his head in this panel. So he goes to
Tim does draw an angry Hawk.
Yeah, and Scarlet's like, look, don't even start. She's like, we did this, we did this, we did this. So now what have you got to say? And then you turn the panel on. Hawk is just like,
he looks
even more pissed off than Destro on the first page. He's like, Duke, and then Duke's like, I don't know. But
you had a point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what you're building to there. It's kind of, I think that there's got to be something going on.
When you're arguing with someone and they're entirely reasonable and have a much better argument than you do, and you're sort of like, yeah, well, I suppose that is kind of true.
Right.
I'm still angry.
I don't know about that.
There's a lot of walking out of rooms angrily in this issue.
Yeah, you got 2 on 1 page right here. We get Hawk's back, Destro's back.
Yeah.
But no, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this issue. I'm looking forward to the next one. This one was good and didn't have any terribly offensive parts of dialogue. So yeah.
Thanks. It wasn't terribly offensive. Thanks, Jay. Does anybody know? I have actually forgotten. I put so many new toys in here. I've got the Lampreys. I've got Copperhead, who I love. Water Moccasin, also a favorite toy, not practical application here. What are these Cobra diver guys called? They're not eels. They were new at the time.
That's not Hydra Viper, I know.
No.
Right? Because that's the guy that's got like...
is that a new version of the eel? I don't know.
Like a fin head or something?
Yeah, I don't think they called it an eel. And anyway, I can't remember what they're called now all of a sudden.
But yeah, I thought it was great. I was reading through here and I was like, I even specifically get to the page where Copperhead and the Lamprey are chasing the grenade, and I was like, it's a Lamprey. And it was just so cool to see a figure like that you just never see. I mean,
yeah,
it's like Ace on the cartoon or something. It's like, who flies the Sky Striker? Everyone. And it's like, oh, well, this is the guy that drives the that drives the Morites.
Yeah.
This guy, not Ripper or somebody else. It's this guy. And I also thought it was really cool how when they all pile on the devilfish, and it's just like you said about the cover of, was it 47 or 48 that had Beachhead wetsuit and Hawk on the devilfish.
Yes.
That poster or that cover is like one of the most iconic and best ones of the line, and that was such a great toy commercial. I mean, I think literally, I mean, it's true that I got devilfish, Hawk, and wetsuit in the store at the same time, and probably Beachhead like very right around there.
I got the devilfish and wetsuit at the same time, and I was elated, right? Like, that you can get the water guy and the water ship at the same time if they don't come together. Like, that's a good trip to the store.
And it's cool to see them on here, how they are, I mean, it's completely impractical. You're not going to have somebody sitting or standing on the side of a little tiny boat like that.
No, that's not how
they did in our toys. So yeah, put them in here on the comic. And the Hydro Sled, which is such an obscure little vehicle.
Yeah. I was always trying to dig up those weird, like, I'm the one who put the buzzbores in the in the Battle of Cobra Island because I just think they're ridiculous, but I love them.
But yeah, I mean, if you're sort of thinking back to the best G.I. Joe nautical battles with that, the devilfish cover, you've got to have a devilfish and a Hydro Sled, really, haven't you?
Yeah.
To answer your question about who these Cobra scuba guys are, there's a 2004 figure, the Electric Eel, which was released both in a green and yellow color scheme and also a like black and gray with red highlights figure, and that's who this appears to be.
Thank you.
All right, so Tim Seeley's artwork in this, I continue to see a lot of really stale, straight up and down poses. Like page 2, like that's okay. You can have 2 people walking into a room as a splash page. It's more dynamic if the artist introduces some kind of diagonal. But then look on page 3, right? Panel 1, Cobra Commander and Destro talking, straight up and down, right? Then the next panel, it's like, okay, we've got a quarter angle where we're like up in the ceiling looking down. Good, okay. And then the third panel, straight on Destro. The fourth panel, straight on Baroness, straight on Destro. Fifth panel, straight on Destro. Tim Seeley draws so much one-point perspective in this, where we're just always like in a room looking like we're parallel with the two walls on either side of us, and we're perpendicular with the wall or the door in front of us. Like, turn the page, Route 66, 1 point perspective. Next panel, Joe's having a party. They're all just standing straight up and down. 1 point perspective. We're looking straight on at this wall, and that line where the wall meets the ceiling above the Joe's heads is a horizontal line. Next two panels, Hawk and Duke coming in, straight on shot. It's not dynamic. There's very little dynamism, and like I see that on the cover, and I see that a little bit in the fight scene. But when I say that Tim Seeley's G.I. Joe artwork to me is boring, or if I'm oversimplifying it and I say something like it's bad or it's not good, I don't mean his actual like drawing of eyeballs and faces and hands and tech. It's like that stuff looks good and it's appealing. What I mean is like acting and panel compositions and page layout. And I'm reminded of the Ninja Showdown in the previous issue where we had a hard time following what was happening. And I have a hard time, not as much, but I sort of got lost with the water fight in this issue. I think some of that is the color, because everyone's colored kind of the same once it's like nighttime in the Atlantic with like a full moon. Everyone becomes this sort of like glowing, cool blue, gray, black. And the Joe costumes in 2003, 2004, there's a lot of sort of repetition, It's like when you just look at it, like a photo of a bunch of the toys lined up, it's like a lot of them have like very similar kinds of pants and very similar kinds of boots and very similar kinds of like jackets or flight jackets or shirts or jumpsuits. And you compare that to, this is not fair, but I'm just going to pick 3 Joes from like 83, 84, like Blowtorch, Gung Ho, Shipwreck. It's like one guy is not wearing a shirt. One guy is wearing short sleeves, and one guy is wearing a like crazy fire retardant suit. So in terms of the choreography of this fight, it's like, okay, there are a couple Joe vehicles and the Joes split up, but I'm sort of off on the wrong foot, because when the mission starts, page 10, right, we see the Tomahawk over the Gulf of Mexico, like great. And then that third panel, Mayday is drawn in this babe pose, which I find really distracting. It's like, you wouldn't quite draw a man in that pose, like a male Joe in that pose. But okay. So the first panel of page 11, just above Mayday's head, like in the distant background, there's a silhouette. Now it's been knocked back. It's not printed as pure black. It's printed as like a 75% blue-gray. And I don't know what that is. And then above it, next to the like radio transmission word balloon, cropped from the top of the page, is another silhouette. And I don't know what that is. Is that like the Tomahawk, like in the distance above them? Like, I think that's these two like jet skis, like going sort of over the camera, away from our point of view, over the devilfish.
I think the large object is the Tomahawk, and the small is definitely one of those jet skis.
Okay. So then in the next panel, with the full moon, there are 2 Joes, and I can kind of see one jet ski, but it's blocked by a pair of arms, and I can kind of see the handlebars of another jet ski, but it's cropped out of the panel. And like then at the bottom of the page, 2 Cobra sea sleds either get like dispatched from the moray or like come out from behind it. And like Tim Seeley draws them both like straight on, which is like not dynamic. So in addition to like not the most exciting sort of action comics drawing, I get some sort of like too many elements that are not properly shown, or they're overlapping, or they're like in silhouette. And then on top of this, it's like, okay, 6 new Joes. I don't know who these people. I mean, I know who 1.5 of them are, right? But it's like if it was Gung Ho, like not wearing a shirt, it's like, okay, I know who that is. But like, like Barrel Roll and Snipe-Face and Green Pants and like Wide Scope and Scope Wide and like I'm sorry, the Joes of 2003 and 4 and 5, a lot of them blend together for me.
Okay, first off, show a little respect. Snipe-Face was killed on Cobra Island, you monster. Okay, I just show some respect. Come on.
So, I like the idea of this fight. And I love seeing the Moray. I love seeing a lamprey. I love seeing someone try to deal with a grenade. It's one of my favorite conventions in like combat stories.
Me too.
I love Copperhead. And I think I like the sort of like phoneticization of his accent, which is certainly helpful when I'm reading it. But when you take it to its like furthest logical conclusion, and Chris Claremont is writing Rogue and Cannonball in 1980s New Mutants and X-Men comics, it's like, oh, is this mean? It's like when Dave Sim does Two of the Rolling Stones when he, in Cerebus around issue like I forget 215, like
during High Society, I think.
Thank you. It's I mean, he does it for lots of characters.
Yeah,
he specifically does Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, and it's really funny. But also, it's like, well, it's like you can do this with like a British white person, but there are lots of people on the earth where if you did this, it might be offensive. So I actually don't know what the rule is. So I had a hard time following this fight. I did think the bit at the end where Barrel Roll gets picked up by a Cobra soldier or I think it's a Cobra soldier and it's not a Neo Viper, right? It's just a new Cobra soldier.
New version of the trooper.
And this the wordless panel of the handshake, him getting pulled up, and then the split quote screen panel where you can see under his helmet. That's really fun. And I think it's really clever that this like very toyetic feature, right, which got its own name. It's like the entire year of the toy is spy troops, like kids, like jaded 28-year-old collectors. Pretend one of your character is on the other team. Like that's not introduced when they're back on base. Hawk and Duke aren't like, oh, and Snipe-Face and Barrel Roll each have these helmets that let them disguise themselves as like other kinds of Vipers, right? It just happens in story, and that's really fun. So that's redeeming for me.
Excellent.
But there are some buts.
I didn't know what was going on right there at first. I get to the bottom of that page and I was like, what is Torpedo saying? And then I get down and I'm like, why are they showing that guy? I really had to. I'm ashamed, honestly, now that I think about it, that I didn't put it together that quick. But yeah, I had to look at that for a long time and try to figure it out.
One of the butts for me, and I'm not talking about Paige Adams getting onto the Devilfish earlier on,
which is fine.
The panel just above that sort of split of Barrel Roll reveal where the Joes are getting back into the chopper. There's a kind of a bit of a severe tangent of the bottom of the loading ramp against the horizon, which was making me think, is the loading ramp sort of dipped down into the water? So that would cause quite a lot of drag, I think, as you were to fly by.
Is all the water that's being kicked up on either side of it, is that from the rotor blade? Is that from the ramp actually having hit the water?
But that aside, I think that was my only real gripe about the art. I did have one following up on the point before. You had mentioned Copperhead. I think this is probably the most we've seen of Copperhead in the comics to date, and certainly the most that he's spoken. And I guess that's like a Cajun accent or something of that ilk.
Yeah, we hear him in like 2 episodes of Sunbow, and then and that's Frank Welker.
Hold it right there! Well, it looks like what we got here is a couple of GI jungle rats. And the only thing a rat's good for is target practice. Ready? Aim! Yo, Joe!
Come on, let's join this pool party.
and then he's recast for Operation Dragonfire, and I forget who does the voice, but there's like sort of doing that voice.
Okay.
So we've heard him in about 3 episodes of the show.
And that's like, so this is consistent.
Did Larry ever use him in A-Raw? I remember way back when we had the water moccasin, but I don't remember seeing him.
He's on the cover of 24, right?
Yeah, and he's there, but he doesn't do anything except drive the water moccasin. I think.
I don't think Hama used him. But didn't he show up recently in the last like 30 issues? Didn't he have a scene?
Seems like I remember you guys maybe saying something about it, but I couldn't tell you when.
We have another concrete connection where the Devil's Due continuity is both the Marvel continuity and the animated continuity, because not just Copperhead gets a Cajun accent, but also Hector Ramirez shows up. And specifically, you know what, I'm going to save that for my, he gets a whole 2 pages, but I'm going to save the second half of this sentence for my eyes.
I just flicked over to look at issue 25 cover, and it looks like it's Cobra Commander who's piloting the moccasin there, and so I don't think in that story he appeared back in issue 25 at all.
Tim sure draws him like a beast, though, man. He's a big dude. Copperhead's a brute.
The figure wasn't pretty big. The figure seemed pretty muscular.
He had a large head. The figure.
And stuff.
Yeah, he was a cool looking figure. It's a shame that we didn't see more of him in the original run. I did have something there to crowbar in with the point about sort of the grenade shenanigans being thrown onto the hydrofoil, which was that when there's a bomb on the boat that's no longer afloat, that's amore.
Wow! Wow!
Wow! Oh well.
Well.
Hey, anybody know what an aneurysm feels like? Because I think that was my Winter Soldier activation song. Something's happening to my head. I've got a nosebleed. That was terrible and beautiful all at once. Oh, side note, those are not electric eels. To further underscore the complicated world of toy naming when you don't hold all the copyrights to things, those troopers are Cobra Morays, not to be confused with the Moray hydrofoil that is present in the same, I just tracked it down, in the same issue. Also...
Wait, what year? What year is the Cobra Moray action?
2003. This is in that weird phase when they brought G.I. Joe back, but they had done away with the swivel arm, with the O-rings, and they had the Star Wars legs, right? They just had the hip and the knee articulation, and everybody said, no. And then they stopped doing that. He came in a 2-pack with wetsuit, appropriately, the Cobra Moray. So he actually he was an old toy at the time of this, even. He's a couple years removed.
Right.
Yeah. So there you go. I think it's a really cool design that was made into an action figure that did not have enough articulation. So, also, I would defend Tim Seeley on one point. I just realized you never see him. You never see the Sea Sled, the Cobra Sea Sled, from the side except in silhouette once. And I would imagine it's probably pretty weird to draw that thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are laying on it, right? And I thought it was a cool thing that we hadn't seen in the comics, but I would understand logically looking at this like, oh, well, these 2 Cobras are on a futon chasing G.I. Joe through the ocean. Like, you know what I mean? I kind of get it, actually.
But what you're saying is that's hard to draw, and so this professional comics artist gets a pass for not trying to draw it.
No, but also the design of the vehicle, there isn't much to it apart from the front.
True.
I mean, there's a great view of it on the package art.
Some might say that the jackass writer got real excited about a toy he remembered and didn't think about the logical applications of having to draw the damn thing. And the artist was just like, whatever. As he was well within his rights to do.
I'm guessing maybe that jackass writer didn't have this sled when he was a kid.
Oh, he did.
Did
he just never had to draw
I did,
it,
and I always knew what an impractical, stupid thing it was. It was one of those toys where you get because it's got G.I. Joe on it, and then you get it home and you're like, how the fuck am I supposed to use this?
Listen, you're not wrong, but I'm not going to say you're right.
Am I misremembering? Was it in the first appearance of it, in the issue with the devilfish on the front cover? Was there a line of dialogue that said something like, "This boat is totally impractical. It would just have one large wake wave, and you're going to capsize"? I don't know.
I don't think so.
You of the four of us, Mark, you are probably sitting the closest to a hardcover bound volume, including issue 47.
Probably.
So maybe while the other three of us talk about something else, you might have time to grab that book. And then at the end of the comic, we've got this. We've mentioned Hawk on this talk show with Hector Ramirez, and we've mentioned all the new characters in the water battle beforehand. We haven't mentioned this page transition, which is after the water battle, where it turns out to be Hector Ramirez is narrating, and we're seeing, I don't think it's footage, I don't think it's like B-roll from this talk show. I think we're actually seeing what's happening in Sierra Gordo, where troops from neighboring Sierra Muerte, an army of high-tech invaders, cross the border from neighboring Sierra Muerte, and we see them. We see jungle. We see firefighting in the jungle. We see some armored soldiers with like fatigue pants, so it sort of feels like Cobra, even though the color scheme doesn't say Cobra. And then we see some soldiers getting taken out, and then it turns out to be a question that Hector Ramirez is asking of Hawk. So he says, the president has said that we can't intervene militarily. Hawk, you're in charge of the G.I. Joe team. Are we gonna do that? And Hawk says no, but maybe wink. And so I wanted to ask my co-hosts. Actually, I wanted to ask my co-hosts and then also the writer of this comic.
Why not?
Sort of how Brandon and Brandon second. Jay and maybe Mark. We have another concrete reminder here that G.I. Joe is much more public than it used to be. So does this work for you, Jay? And then Brandon, like, how do you like square that circle? How do you think of or deal with the G.I. Joe that is like somewhat declassified? So Jay.
It doesn't really work for me that well. I would prefer for G.I. Joe to be more secret. I guess it kind of comes back to what the real nature of the conflict is, and what Cobra is like in this continuity. Because remember, I mean, we would see in the Sunbow cartoon especially. Well, I mean, we've talked about Cobra Commander coming on TV and calling out the Joes and stuff like that, and then you would have wave after wave after wave of tanks and his tanks and stuff coming over the hill. And, everybody knew, obviously, because they freaking attacked Washington, D.C. and every other city in the country. But it just goes back to how much is the general public aware of what Cobra does? Like look at in real life, 9/11. Well, okay, everybody knows about Al-Qaeda when they do something huge like that. But how many people know about a group like Boko Haram? I mean, there's a lot of smaller groups that people just don't know about because they haven't done anything massive and horrific that would warrant a public group opposing them. I kind of prefer for the Joes to be secret, but I understand that since this continuity is kind of a blending, I don't know if we ever had Hector Ramirez in Marvel's A-Raw. I don't think so. But now that we do in here, so it's, those rules kind of loosen up, I think, in areas like that. Like we talked about last issue, Roadblock, being a chef, Flint writing a book, that kind of thing. We've established that the Joes are public. It's just a matter of how public and how much does the public know about each Joe, I guess. But yeah, I wouldn't, if it were me, I wouldn't have done it that way. I'm sure Brandon had his reasons. And yeah, like I said, I can't fault him for it because that's the established universe that he went into.
So, so that was my doing. And that definitely started with the Scott Sturgis story, very pointedly and on purpose. So, growing up with G.I. Joe, like we all did, I realized that there was coming a point where I had to decide what my G.I. Joe was going to be and how it would, fall into the greater story that is so important to me as a fan, but also have its own identity. It wasn't ever really truly, and I've had people tell me I'm lying. I didn't set out to be like, I'm going to make this more like the cartoon, because the cartoon wasn't my jam, really, in the sense that I strongly preferred the comics and the file cards and that lore. However, I wanted to have a reporter. I didn't see a reason it shouldn't be Hector Ramirez, right? It's a little call out. It doesn't hurt anything. In terms of the Joes being public, this was a time. It certainly wasn't a new concept at the time, but thinking back to this era of life in America, this was a time when more and more people wanted answers and accountability from the government and from the military and from the highest points of power. And I thought, rather than playing those time-honored G.I. Joe traditions of let's spend 3 pages going to Fort Huachuca and talking about how nobody knows we're here, which is great. That's a key part of the lore. I wanted to put the G.I. Joe team and Cobra into different circumstances and a different relationship with the world. And I will say, Mark has read ahead a little bit. These are all things that definitely continue to come into play and continue to be set pieces and problems for the team going forward. But I just thought that in an age of the internet and new media and a growing sort of public demand for information and oversight and awareness, it seemed logical that this anti-terrorist team who wears garish outfits and goes around stopping snake-themed terrorists from doing all sorts of insane things in global hotspots around the world, like somebody's going to find out and somebody's going to notice, and you can only tell them it's a weather balloon for so long. So I wanted to, it was all a complication that I intentionally added, and some people did not like it. But for me, it was a way to bring a different circumstance into the setting and complicate things.
I wouldn't say that I don't like it, because it does work with what you've done, and I like where this scene especially goes. At first it's kind of like, what the hell is Duke doing, or is Hawk doing, talking to this guy now? But then where it leads up and how the issue wraps up is like, oh damn. So yeah, I mean, as long as it's good and it leads to good moments, where if I were reading this month to month, I'd be like, what the hell, is Hawk dead? I'm like, I got to get the next issue to see what happens to Hawk.
Also, I do love the concept that I always took away from the cartoon, and I used it here on that last page, which is, there is one guy at Cobra who works for Cobra Commander, and Cobra Commander's like, I want to send a message. And he's like, you want to mail something? Or like, do you want to like send an email? He's like, put my face on every screen. And the guy's like, yeah, no, got it. No problem. And they call that guy, like, his name is Screens or something, right? And he like any TV in the world he can commandeer and put Cobra Commander's face on it, because Cobra Commander loves being on television.
So,
don't laugh all at once, guys. Some of the jokes don't land. It's okay.
Well, I mean, it goes without saying,
yeah.
Right?
He does love being on television, Brandon. That's a very astute observation. Well,
and clearly loves the sound of his own voice. You don't talk like that with.
Make sure you get my best side.
Listening. Watch Cobra Commander be in the bathroom going, this damn toothpaste. Completely alone.
So on the second to last page,
completely alone is right.
Hawk finishes the interview with Hector Ramirez. And in that first panel, there's a character who sort of sticks out in the background all the way on the right. And then we see that character again. They've got a turtleneck and a sports blazer or an overcoat. And so in panels 2 and 3, Hawk sort of thinks he sees this person, and then the person's gone. And then in panel 4, this person again, with their sort of eyes again in shadow, is all the way to the right of the page, cropped. So seemingly like moving away from where Hawk and Lady J are. And then the TV studio inside this building explodes. So do we take it as this is someone who planted a bomb and got out? Do we take it as this is a suicide bomber? Or do we take it as this is someone else who's interesting in the story and like was also caught up when a bomb went off in this TV studio?
That would be your saboteur. That would be your, and I don't necessarily think suicide bomber, but I wouldn't rule it out.
He either did get out, or maybe it's like a bat or something that they don't care. I mean, Cobra Commander shoots those things for fun, so they're expendable.
He's a turtleneck viper.
Yeah, and I guess the
turtleneck viper,
the grey roll neck there, sort of giving slight vibes of Firefly, perhaps. So it's not definitively saying it's him, but you could potentially think it might be mysterious guy.
You never really get a good look at his face.
True. It's because he's moving his head.
That's right. Out of all the skill sets in the G.I. Joe and Cobra universe, moving your head slightly to avoid being photographed, that's the chef's kiss ability right there. You can be highly trained in everything, but you're going to get your picture taken. Not if you're Firefly.
Mm-hmm. I found that bit in back from issue whatever it is, Siegel 47. That's right. And I think the thing that I'm remembering is there's a sequence where the Devilfish goes in between the two sleds, and Hawk says, "Floor it, wetsuit, plow right between them. Those flat bottom skimmers will capsize in our wake." And they do. They go through them, and then there's these the eels piloting the boat, sort of whoa, as they sort of wobble over. I think that's probably what I was remembering, but
good call.
I know that I moved on from the sea battle in this issue, and I went to talk about the two scenes after it, or the scene after it in the transition. But I found another note of mine which speaks to my confusion about the sea duel. This sea duel in issue Devil's Due 28. On page 15, panel 5, the lamprey says, that Joe boat pilot is no slouch. We have engines, but his missiles took out most of our electronics. Orders, Copperhead? And I thought, wait, when did anyone fire missiles? So 2 panels below, there's an explosion, but that's the grenade. And then the panel before that, there's like machine gun fire. And 2 panels before that, on page 14, there's machine gun fire. And before then, the 2 pages before then, I see the white phosphorus and machine gun fire. So I wasn't sure if some of this fight is happening off panel, because some of it is the Devilfish, and then some of it is the 2 jet skis, or if... Like, this struck me as dialogue that's describing something that's not in the art, but I don't know if it was, like, meant to be in the art, or if, like, sort of reasonably and casually someone's like, man, they're attacking us from every side. We got hit here and there and here and there and here. And then I'd think, oh, yeah, well, I haven't seen all that. It's, the sort of the battle's being truncated for my reading enjoyment. But I found that the specificity of that line sort of is representative of how I have a hard time following this fight.
You know what? I'm reading along with this, and yeah, I guess we are talking about some manner of off-panel action not depicted in the art. I'm doing a missile check, and you are right on the money. Now if earlier on someone's, like when they're on the Devilfish, like Mayday's like patting the 2 missiles on the side. She's like, can't wait to fire these puppies. And then the groundwork is laid. Or Torpedo says to Mayday, remember, as you're sitting on the side of this very fast little boat, like the missiles are going to fire. Don't get your shins burned. Nice.
There's a danger of shin burn.
And here's an interesting thing. When the I am now disseminating the art here. So the devilfish has 2 missiles on either side when it leaves the tomahawk, and then the next time we have an opportunity to see any view of that, it does not have its missiles. So yeah, they got fired at some point.
Okay, so there's a little bit more of this scene taking place off panel.
Yeah, in your imagination.
The rest of that story will be told in, 27B comic pack.
Yeah, right.
Written by Brandon Jerwa, drawn by...
Actually, no, the cool thing, everyone, is that 27B, that 2-pack, is going to come with a recolor of Barrel Roll as a Raptor Viper.
I love this.
In sort of a gray-brown. Yeah. And also... do I want to play this straight or do I want to make fun?
I don't know. You had me at recolor.
Dealer's choice.
I think scope wide. I think it's going to have wide scope recolored in like pink, and he's going to be scope wide or something. I was trying to think if there's any figure that looks like Mayday here in the like sea attack. So Paige Adams. Do you all? This is another note on my notes. The 3 of us, I forget what was it? Issue like 16. There's that scene in the
Cabal arc you're thinking of, which is
in the mansion in Europe, and someone gets shot like inside from that like grand staircase, and my comment was that the wrong person does the shooting. Like it should have been Lady J, because Flint was the one who has sort of been wronged, and we had a hard time figuring out like who it was and why it was this person. And then Mark said, no, it's this green shirt who got mentioned like 15 issues ago. Is that Paige Adams?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Tim.
Okay. All right. So all I'm doing is admitting that I don't remember this comic that we read for like 10 episodes ago when we did the Cabal. Okay.
That was Paige Adams. Well, I think she was blonde back then, wasn't she?
Yeah, her appearance is quite a bit different. In
this is, you know what? That's why I had a hard time without actually going and pulling that comic out and doing the research. That's why I thought, wait, have we seen this person before? Because I kind of remember that panel where they're like, whoa, Paige Adams took out so-and-so from across the room. I had remembered this person being blonde.
Yeah, now it's kind of, what? Like a strawberry blonde, maybe? Reddish brown?
It's brown.
Ladies change their hair color.
Dinah's not on the mission, but she's a sniper too?
Yeah.
She's a sniper.
So this introduction page, we have 2 snipers. When the 6 Joes reveal their new costumes with the blue background. Because
3.
Mayday's sort of a sniper?
Yeah, sort of.
Cool.
And Barrel Roll.
3 snipers.
No, that's very true. Yeah, no, we're loaded down with snipers.
Also, scope wide. Scope wide is the daytime like crowd control. He's in bright pink, so you can see him.
Right, and ironically, Snipe-Face, not a sniper.
Oh dear. Okay, right. Shall we move on to I Spy?
I spy with my little eye.
The whole issue is an I Spy. I think we've touched on everything, probably.
I got 2 good ones.
I've used up all of mine apart from one, which I'm sure Tim is about to tell us about.
Go for it, Tim.
Not just that this is Hector Ramirez from the cartoon, but his show in this issue is called 20 Questions, and he's sitting in front of a 20 Questions logo, and that is what his show is called in the 1985 episode of G.I. Joe. And that the episode title is 20 Questions. So there's a small one. Also, on the letters page, the first letter is from a letter writer named Tom Whalen. And the reply is, now I don't normally put fan art here, but this one struck my, quote, wacky ninja bone. Thanks, Tom. And Tom is also saying that he likes the comic. And there's a little bit of fan art there. It's like 2 inches by 2 inches in this comic book that I'm holding. And it's a very flat, cartoony, no outlines, just color. Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow fighting in front of a red circle, like the Japanese flag with the Arashikage logo subtly behind it. And I thought, wait, I know that name, Tom Whalen. Tom Whalen has done a bunch of art for some brands that we all like Ninja Turtles and G.I. Joe and Transformers. He was doing some G.I. Joe covers for IDW back in 2013. And Tom Whalen created the artwork for the brand new Alley Viper classified figure.
Wow.
So if you are thinking of the Alley Viper figure right now, where the artwork is on the box, it's like 3 Alley Vipers and they're facing to the left and they're very flat and graphical. It's just like chunks of orange and dark orange and blue and like darker blue and then like gray for the gun. There are no lines, there's no rendering. It almost looks like it's like cut paper. Whalen's art to me like owes a lot in a good way to like Russian constructivist posters of the early 20th century. And if you Google his name, you will see a bunch of like prints or like lithographs that he's done for, you know, Turtles and G.I. Joe and Transformers and Marvel, where he's got these very flat characters and a lot of, hey, that thing that I like, strong diagonals. But these images are like meant to be like big posters and the characters are very flat. And yet what's so cool about his art, his sense of color is totally awesome. Like if you look at his, he did a Decepticon poster or print that's got Megatron and the Insecticons and like Rumble. And it's all in like warm grays and purples and a little bit of like orange. And he's very much a designer.
Yeah.
Like his stuff is like where illustration and graphic design come together, because he's dealing with shapes and with composition. He's not dealing with line. He's not like rendering. He's not drawing the outlines of things. Dealing with flat form.
It's very much in like, sort of like propaganda poster or even like sort of kind of instructional kind of poster sort of vein. Yeah, he's done some really, really cool G.I. Joe posters and several covers like Cobra Files number 1 and 2 and so on. And he hasn't just done the Alley Viper classified figure. He also did the Zartan one, the deluxe Zartan package,
nice.
With the rotating faces.
I am so glad you caught this, because I love comic book letter pages that feature someone who ended up becoming a writer or becoming an artist, or, you know, like these weird little bits of history. I never got a letter published in a comic. I don't think I ever sent one. I think I sent one to G.I. Joe once. But I just, you know, I think it's super cool when people have that little moment of comic book history to their name. And what a great bit of information.
We should be specific here. It's not just Tom Whalen this, Tom Whalen that. He has a website, strongstuff.net. I have another small I Spy. The first page after the 2 pages of letters is an internal Devil's Due like publishing page. And there are 4 dates for that summer where the Devil's Due crew is going to show up at conventions. And there's a photo of someone and Blaylock sitting at the Devil's Due table, and behind them are cosplayers as Destro, Cobra Soldier, Officer, and Soldier. And then on the bottom of this page, there's a list of everything that Devil's Due is publishing for the following month, April of 2004, and also the month after that for May. And both months, April and May, Devil's Due is publishing 9 comics and 2 softcover collections of comics. And, you know, when you like hold an issue in your hand and you count the ads, it's like, oh, there's an ad for Micronauts and Reloaded and Voltron and the next month's regular G.I. Joe. And I sometimes forget, you know, this like small publisher 2.5 years in or 3 years in, they weren't publishing 3 or 4 comics a month. They were publishing at this point 9.
Oh yeah. They got right to it, and they really jumped in there and got some licenses, and it was exciting at the time. Who doesn't love Micronauts, right? Like, so yeah, I really thought that they were on a very sort of fast track to success with the way that their slate expanded so quickly. Just a little over 2 years into having G.I. Joe.
Very good. Jay or Brandon, did you have any that we've not talked about?
I think we've touched on everything, really. I didn't have anything else in particular.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything either. No big things. I mean, I mentioned this earlier that I was definitely trying to be trying to be Larry in a couple of spots, specifically with Willie Pete.
Yeah.
And let's see if these mokes like beef. Anytime you have to invoke an editorial box to explain what you're saying, that is definitely me trying my best Larry impersonation.
We all love those little editorial boxes. I mean, I know we've mentioned before certain, issues that don't have them, and it's like, oh, they haven't. Is the Devil's Due up until this point that hasn't had them very much, guys?
Oh yeah, hardly at all. So it's something that's sort of.
It's nice to have them in there.
Exactly.
As a kid, that's what we loved, because you'd be like, what does that mean? Oh, okay. And then if you just needed more, then you'd go find an encyclopedia or something, look it up.
It's part of that sort of that authentic G.I. Joe formula.
Yeah.
One of it is that kind of military jargon with a little editorial box. So great to see that back.
Let me throw one little I Spy in here real quick. I guess I do have one. I'm flipping back through the pages. Page 10, where the Joes are approaching Cobra Island. The bottom panel, they're getting ready to drop the devilfish, and Torpedo's sitting there with his mask and stuff on. Everybody else is like open-faced, and Torpedo's got... And I'm sure if you looked, he'd probably have his flippers on underneath the thing.
the guy who is logically at the least risk of being in the water in this particular configuration, he's ready to go, right? He is good to go. Also, the devilfish's dimensions in that shot are interesting. Yeah.
But it's always funny to see Torpedo, especially like in the base, with a mask, goggles, flippers, walking around or in Fort Knox.
I'm looking forward to the issue where Gung Ho and Torpedo go to the Arctic, and
Torpedo will be in a wetsuit.
And I won't let Gung Ho put on an Arctic coat, and I also won't let Torpedo take off his flippers.
Perfect.
So just walking around all this snow and ice and craggy, dangerous, sharp rocks.
And then we're gonna send Quick Kick in undercover in an expensive dinner party. But he will just dress like Quick Kick.
You have a little bow tie on.
Yeah, right.
And that's it.
That's it. That's the only change.
Maybe a pair of cuffs as well. Oh, bless him. So, favorite line of dialogue?
Quote of the week. 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 Quote of the week.
Talking, sort of leaning into the kind of the almost the hammerisms of the Willie Pete and whatnot. I liked Mayday's little bit of dialogue where she says, "So the new guys are Section 8." And Torpedo, crazy? Maybe you just saved our tails. And yeah, there's enough on the page. It kind of explains what the Section 8 is without necessarily. You can kind of discern what it would be without the box, but yeah, it's that sort of nice jargon there where it's like you're kind of slightly outside of the world. You go, yeah, that's a kind of a military thing about being crazy, right? And
yeah.
So that was cool.
My favorite is on the first page when Destro's talking to the Claws commander, and the Claws commander says he moved the prisoners inside when it started raining, and Destro goes, "Thank you for that. I'd certainly hate to think that our prisoners might be uncomfortable." Like, leave them in the rain.
Oh, excellent.
Claws Commander is the heart of the Cobra organization.
I don't know. He looks like he's had too much coffee. He's like, "We've been looking for Dr. Mindbender all night. I haven't wanted to make this phone call."
Yeah, is Destro using a bit of a choke, forced choke there on him? He's pulling at his collar. It's uncomfortable.
He's just afraid that's what's going to happen.
Honestly, it's just that his mask is itchy.
I know about that.
Right? No, Claws Commander, he was ahead of the game the whole time, right?
Okay, let's do final thoughts and a Yojo score. Why not? Brandon, do you want to kick off? What are your kind of final thoughts looking back on this issue after a little while away from it?
I have to say I'm pretty proud of this issue overall. I think that there's a considerable amount of G.I. Joeing going on. And, you know, my goal was always to make a G.I. Joe and Cobra book that had plenty of Cobra in it, because for me, that's half the appeal. I am clearly setting some things into motion here that I think pay off fairly well. I mean, you be the judge as we move ahead, but this just, it felt like a nice start, and knowing, you know, how it ends, because I wrote it. Okay, mostly remembering how it ends, because I wrote it. How about that? I have to say that, you know, this kind of accomplishes everything. Hawk does come across a little too angry, I will say. And I wanted Hawk to be in a real weird position. I wanted him to be struggling with, you know, the team operating correctly, and dealing with the bloat of, you know, green shirts and this massive non-specialist organization that they have sort of rebuilt since the relaunch of G.I. Joe. But also this, you know, this nonsense of having to go on TV and being just like, no, we're not going to Sierra Gordo. Come on.
Yeah, I love it. He's like, no, I don't have any plans to send Joes there.
I'm totally not going to send any more Joes there. Which again, you know, that whole accountability new media thing, it's, you know, it's the officials having to go on TV and be just like, no, there's no weapons of mass destruction. Come on. So, you know, I just wanted to play with that kind of stuff, and I like it. It's new and something exciting to throw into the mix.
Cool. I'll go next. Why not? So I think, I enjoyed it. I think we're seeing the team hitting its stride a little bit more. The sort of the pacing is good. We sort of mentioned on the previous issues that it felt like maybe there was just a couple too many things being trying to cram in, and it didn't feel quite that same amount, you know, that sort of same feeling of there being just a bit too much. It felt a little bit more like it could breathe. There's good action. There's new Joes being introduced. There's a nautical battle, which is always great in a Joe story. So yeah, enjoyed it, and also sort of setting out that it's one of 5. So it feels like, you know, this is gonna go somewhere, and leaving on a good cliffhanger for part 2. So I think I'll give it a strong 7.5, which gives me some leeway for ranking some of the future stories higher.
I'll give this a 5. You know, for all the reasons that I've already enumerated, you know, art, color, story, characters, follow along ability. You know, everyone's getting a little better except for color as they go. But you know, this feels very much like the previous issue. So I'm looking forward to bigger and better sooner.
May I, as the writer, interject a question?
Yeah.
If you read this issue, which you guys have done an excellent job of pretending you did, if you were reading this issue and then you walked into a store and you could buy one action figure and every character in this story was available, which action figure would you want?
Barrel roll.
Yeah, for me, I think it would be the same. Barrel roll. That cover makes quite a big impression. Just that concept of him as that new cool looking Cobra, the Raptor Viper. I think that's got a lot of appeal to it. So I guess as a storytelling team, you've done a good sell on that concept and character.
I'm going with Mayday because of the cheesecake pose on the fish. And to be contrary.
Sure. Fair enough.
All right, my turn to rate this sucker. I want to give it a 7, but I also want to take points away for the art and the coloring. So I kind of want to give it a 6, but I really want to give it a 7. So that's what I'm going to do. I do like it. Like I said, I think that we're building to something. It feels like Mark and Brandon both said, it's more definitely G.I. Joey than some of the last few, because we've just got so much action and so many players and vehicles and things, and that really makes it like, I guess, just a really rewarding issue because there's so much stuff in there. You know, it's nice every once in a while to see an issue that focuses on like one character, you know, or one kind of thing. But, you know, when it comes right down to it, this is a comic book based around toys. So when you get to see a lot of different toys in one issue, it really makes it cool.
Good stuff. So that's us done with issue 28, but we do have time for another little segment. So we've trailed it before. It's called G.I. Joe Origins, and that's where we give somebody the chance to do their movie pitch for a G.I. Joe Origins film featuring their very favourite characters, or even least favourite characters, any character. So we've had Cutter on last time, where I gave the movie pitch for the Cutter G.I. Joe Origins film, paying little to no attention to the actual story of Cutter, both in toy, file card, or comic appearances. So much in the same vein as the approach to the actual G.I. Joe movie. So very good pedigree there. So we are very, very lucky to have Brandon with us today, and he's prepared a G.I. Joe Origins movie pitch of his own. So Brandon, which character have you decided to spotlight in your G.I. Joe Origins movie pitch?
Well, Mark, I've decided to focus on Cross Country. Cross Country, the commander of the Havoc vehicle. Mm-hmm. Does anybody know what Havoc stands for? Right off the top of your head? Do it.
Heavy armored vehicle ordnance
carrier,
convertible
car.
I'm always ready to sing the jingle for the Havoc commercial, so because I've memorized it. So
I would love it if you did that right now.
If that had been the question. Cobra's got to face much more than Havoc when Havoc's on the go. 'Cause out of Havoc comes a big surprise that gives more firepower to G.I. Joe.
Huh. You know, I might have a word burglar song or two memorized, but no toy jingles.
Talent.
This is the new G.I. Joe Havoc.
Nothing's too tough for Havoc. Nothing's too rough for Havoc.
Look, Cobra Ferret's after him. Yo, Joe!
Cobra's got to face much more than Havoc when Havoc's on the go. 'Cause out of Havoc comes a big surprise that gives more firepower to G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe!
Live the adventure of G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe Havoc comes with driver, other Joe and Cobra figures and equipment sold separately.
Yo, Joe!
I was actually trying to remember the Devilfish song before this episode. All I remember is, you're aboard the G.I. Joe Devilfish when you run into a Cobra attack. Cobra attack! Right? Sure. I started to sound a little like Strong Bad during that one. You're aboard the G.I. Joe Devilfish.
You're on a high-speed mission in enemy waters. There's no turning back. You're aboard the G.I. Joe Devilfish. Devilfish! When you run into a Cobra attack. Cobra attack! Cobra's got a new hydro blend. Cobra's an evil foe. And Cobra's new hydro blend is gonna get G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe!
What happens next? Find out in Marvel Comics.
Anyway.
What does Havoc stand for?
I don't know.
He was just testing us.
Jerwa's like, I don't know. I write comics. I don't buy and memorize toys.
I was testing you, not testing me. Heavy articulated vehicle ordnance carrier.
Yeah,
pretty close.
We were 80% right.
Okay, so my G.I. Joe Origins Cross Country trailer is actually taken from the movie that's in production right now. So there's going to be voices and stuff. Don't be alarmed, okay? So you just tell me when to go, and I'll run you the audio we have for the upcoming trailer for this movie that's really going to happen.
Okay, and scene.
Talking Joe presents
G.I. Joe Origins.
I'm on a new level. I'm on a new level.
After years of defending human freedom against a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world, Robert Blaze discovered that the world had changed around him. I'm from North Carolina and I've great pride in my family's Southern heritage. But now you're telling me that the symbol I wear on my jacket, the flag of the United States Confederacy, has negative connotations in a more advanced and thoughtful world? Because I'll tell you what, I thought the stars and bars always stood for being a real American hero. Well, you have to keep in mind it was a very different America at the time. As for the hero part, that could really mean a whole lot of different things depending on who's calling you a hero. Thanks for setting me straight. I guess it's time to start listening to the differing viewpoints of my friends. I'm gonna go find Stalker and Roadblock right now and ask them if they know what the Confederate flag stands for. Yeah, do not do that. Please do not do that. Now I know, and knowing is half the battle. The other half is driving some kind of train tank tractor thing in the battle, brimming with weapons and armor to the hilt. Except, of course, on the driver's seat, I've only ever wanted to do two things, drive a tank and have a convertible. And I'm gonna drive this convertible tank right up to Cobra's front door with my hair blowing in the breeze. Yo, Joe! G.I. Joe Origins. Cross country.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Brandon. I'm glad you were able to source that clip for us.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. It's a sneak peek right here. This is an exclusive to my favorite podcast, Talking Joe.
Brandon, are you familiar with season 2 of the cartoon?
I probably. Is season 2?
That's with Serpentor.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So Into Your Tent I Will Silently Creep is a bit of a spotlight on Cross Country. His radio gets stolen, and he has this line where he says something like, "How can I be expected to drive into battle without my country music playing?"
Yes.
All right, that tears it. I've taken a lot of ribbon from you all, but now you done gone too far.
Cross country, what are you talking about?
My tape deck. Somebody stole my tape deck. How do you expect me to ride into battle if I can't play my country and western music? Tain't funny.
You're not accusing your fellow Joes, are you?
Well, I don't think any of you are thieves, but I know there's a whole bunch of music critics.
Cross country, don't be such a jerk.
And so, if I may propose, if the studio might propose a small rewrite for your really vital and definitely filmable, like this, you could bring this in under budget screenplay. I think there's an opportunity to incorporate that there are two things that your cross country has always wanted to do, and if you are as a writer of a G.I. Joe comic that incorporated elements from the cartoon, interested in incorporating elements from the cartoon into your screenplay, your version of Cross Country could also be very much into playing his country music as he drives into battle.
I love this. If we could get like Lil Nas X and Lee Greenwood to do a remix of Proud to Be an American, I think that this is money on the table, fellas, and I want that money.
Cool. So I think that is us pretty much wrapped up. Next time on Talking Joe Disavowed, we will continue our look at the Brandon Jerwa era of G.I. Joe with issues 29 and 30. So parts 2 and 3 of this 5-part arc. And alongside that, we'll be covering the regular Larry Hammer issues as they come out. So where can people find you guys and more about the things that you want to plug? Brandon, you sound a little bit like you might have turned into a dog.
My dog hates everyone who isn't in the house. So there are people outside the house now, and my dog hates them because that's what he does.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that.
People make it easy.
I'm like that too, except with people that are already here. Okay, Brandon, is there anything that you would like to plug, promote, say where people can find you?
I would love it if people would continue to not buy my albums on Bandcamp. That's laterhumans.bandcamp.com. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. You know where to find me otherwise on the Facebook.
Excellent. Jay, where can people find you?
Break Room Sketches on Facebook.
And Tim, where can people find you when there isn't a gale blowing outside, meaning that you're shuttered in away from the world?
Yes, at the moment we're recording, there is a tremendous blizzard shutting down most of Massachusetts. So every other day of the year, my comic book store is Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts, and my blog is realamericanbook.com.
Very good. Yeah, if people want to find us and the show, talkingjoe.co.uk is the website. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Like and subscribe. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe. So big thanks to all of our backers, Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, and Justin, who are getting early access to episodes, as well as other things. So I think that is us done. But remember,
nobody beats Talking Joe.
A real American podcast.
With guys from England and also some big old place called America. Laters.
I was so scared there was a part of that song I was supposed to sing and I was not rehearsed.
Who is this man? Who is this legend? Who is this myth? Who is Brandon Joe?
Comic writer, bourgeoisie, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Funko Pop manatee, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Come on, Brandon, you can do it. Pave the way, put your back into it. Tell us why, show us how. Look at you where you come from, look at you now. Hammer, Casey, and Blaylock. Amateurs can go suck a cock. Write those books, dig a ditch. Come on, Brandon, get 'em. Have you ever seen a stripping gorilla? Have you ever seen SprocketMan the hero? Morning radio DJ, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Stalker of Dan Jolly, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Come on, Brandon, you can do it. There can only be one, you can prove it. Tell us why, show us how. It's happened before, it'll happen again. Wraith and Chuckles and Red Shadows, created in polyphonic prose. Write those books, sing a song, type a viper, get 'em. Have you ever seen a Dragonski look-alike?